Tonight on Reporting Scotland, we speak to the civil servant who claims she was taped to a chair by colleagues after she complained about racism and sexism. The family left waiting over 5 months to hold a funeral. The sister of a murder victim calls for a change in the law.
We still have funeral arrangements to make and just closure almost on what's already been a really traumatic time.
Also in the programme, why more than 100 pupils with English postcodes attend schools in the Scottish borders. And the science labs that brought us Dolly the sheep now alters the DNA of these pigs to make them immune to a lethal disease. Good evening. A woman who claims she was taped to a chair by colleagues at a Scottish government agency has spoken for the first time about how the incident left her feeling petrified and degraded. Deanne Fitzpatrick says she experienced bullying and harassment after she became a whistleblower. She spoke to our investigations correspondent Mark Daly. Some viewers may find the language in this piece offensive.
It was the picture that provoked a global outcry. Canadian-born Deanne Fitzpatrick restrained to a chair and gagged by 2 of her male civil servant colleagues. She says it happened after she tried to blow the whistle on bullying and misogyny in the Scrabster office of Marine Scotland, a Scottish government agency. The day after the BBC broke the story, the First Minister announced an urgent review.
I am absolutely horrified at the photograph that has been in the media.
Now as she awaits the outcome of that investigation and an employment tribunal, Deanne Fitzpatrick is speaking out about what she says she endured.
Comments would be made to me where I would be called a retard. I was told that all women are whores.
And what happened in 2010? With the restraint, what was it that took place?
2 fellow officers that I worked with discovered that I was the whistleblower, and one of them had a roll of tape in his hands and he was flicking it about in his hands, and the other gentleman came to my left side slightly back, and that's when he kind of bear hugged me while I was in the chair, and the other gentleman then, because I was kicking and I did curse and tell them to leave me alone, and they taped my legs, and then he started to tape rest me, and because I was making noise, one of them told the other guy, give me some tape, I shuts her up. He took the tape and he placed it over my mouth, and then he said, that's what you get for speaking out about the boys.
Were you scared?
I was petrified. I was petrified because I didn't know what they were going to do to me. But at one point I became numb to the point that I just froze. I couldn't make a noise, I couldn't move, I just froze.
Deanne complained, but was told by her manager it was just boys being boys. She went back to work, but again things came to a head when she was threatened by HR with disciplinary action for going to her dying father's bedside in Canada.
It really showed me what they thought of me. How low can a person go when somebody is feeling so down, who's rushed home to see her father for the very last time, to say goodbye? It kind of finished me. Their actions morally and mentally destroyed me.
She says it led her to the brink of suicide.
I made up my mind that they've pushed me too far. I couldn't take it anymore.
You were going to end your life?
Yes. Because they couldn't hurt me anymore then. There was nothing left to do.
A Scottish Government spokesman said, harassment or abuse of any form will not be tolerated in the Scottish Government. This complaint is being taken seriously and is being fully investigated. The First Minister has asked the Permanent Secretary to conduct a full review to ensure that there is a positive working culture in Marine Scotland.
What do you want to happen out of this?
I want my job back. I want to be able to work in an environment that's safe and friendly. I actually want everyone else that's been bullied and still being bullied, I want them to be able to do the same thing. I do not want anyone to be where I was not so long ago.
Deanne Fitzpatrick talking there to Mark Daly. Amanda Digby's brother Paul was murdered more than 5 months ago, but she's not been able to bury him because a victim's body must be released by the Procurator Fiscal, and that can be delayed by the arrested person's defence. Now Amanda is calling for a change in the law to allow funerals to take place sooner. Katie Hunter reports.
He was happy-go-lucky. We've been robbed of that because someone took his life that night.
Amanda Digby says her family have suffered 5 months of hell, and not being able to bury Paul has compounded their grief.
We're all gradually returning to work and trying to return to normal activities, but we know that we still have that hurdle to overcome. We still have funeral arrangements to make and just closure almost on what's already been a really traumatic time.
Paul Matheson was killed in Renfrew in January. A man was charged with his murder in May. In Scotland, a defence lawyer can order a second post-mortem examination on behalf of the accused, which can delay the body being released. A review of the system was ordered in February, and some lawyers agree it's time to look at the alternatives.
I don't think it's beyond the realms of possibility, if we all sit down and think about it, that we might be able to come up with a system that would be better for the family, but would still allow we as defence solicitors to do our job properly and professionally, which is what we need to do.
A Crown Office spokesperson told the BBC it's working on a revised post-mortem examination protocol that may reduce the number of post-mortem examinations instructed by the defence. In England, a second independent post-mortem can be carried out before an arrest and the results kept on file, so the body can be released sooner.
We've waited for 5 months. We surely have a right as a family to lay a loved one to rest. I fully understand the right to a second post-mortem, but I don't understand the reasons why this can't be carried out and kept on record like it is in other countries.
Amanda still doesn't know exactly when Paul's body will be released. She hopes it'll be sooner rather than later. Katie Hunter, reporting Scotland.
A man is seriously ill after he was ambushed and stabbed in East Dunbartonshire. The 30-year-old had been sitting in the passenger seat of a van in Torrance. A dark-coloured Audi stopped in front of it and a number of men got out of the car, smashing the window of the van and attacking the man with a knife. He was then driven to a nearby Asda. Police are considering the possibility of links to serious and organised crime. A crackdown on internet knife sales, which was called for after the killing of Aberdeen schoolboy Bailey Gwynn, could become law across the UK. The Home Secretary, Sajid Javid, has introduced the Offensive Weapons Bill, which would require online retailers to check that potential buyers are over 18. It would also ban the delivery of knives and acids to home addresses. The Scottish Government backs the changes. Highland councillors have given the go-ahead to plans for a championship golf course in Sutherland. They had deferred the decision on the proposed Cool Links application earlier this month, but approved it today despite their planners' recommendation to refuse it. Part of the 18-hole development near Embo is on a site of special scientific interest, and conservation groups fear that permanent damage could be caused to the area's unique coastal sand dunes. The SNP is calling for Donald Trump's visit to the UK next month to be cancelled. The Westminster leader Ian Blackford made the call amid a row over the detention of child migrants. President Trump could also visit Scotland. Well, let's go to Westminster and speak to our political correspondent Nick Erdley. Nick, is this further than a senior member of the SNP has gone before?
It is, Jackie. We've heard a lot of opposition in the past to the idea of a state visit with all the pageantry and pomp that would entail. But Ian Blackford is going further today by saying a working visit planned for next month, when we think the President will come to the south of England and potentially to Scotland too, that should be called off. As you say, it's all about a row over the separation of child migrants from their families at the Mexico-US border. We've seen some pretty harrowing pictures over the last 48 hours of kids in detention centres. Ian Blackford brought this up at Prime Minister's questions. Theresa May said they were deeply disturbing and wrong, but Mr Blackford goes further. He says they are morally reprehensible, and while they continue to feature, it would be wrong to roll out the red carpet for the US President. That said, so far, Downing Street have shown little sign that they're planning to rethink any plans.
And also today in the Commons, Nick, MPs backed the EU withdrawal bill, and the suggestion is it could be signed off in the Lords within the next couple of hours.
That's right, it will go back to the Lords tonight, and I suspect they will wave it through. The Commons was debating the issue again today. The government managed to ward off defeat. It was worried about a vote on the role MPs would play if talks with Europe break down with no deal. It offered some more concessions. It managed to win over rebels on the Conservative benches enough to win that vote. And so it goes to the Lords tonight. I suspect it will go through fairly quickly there. And that means this massive piece of legislation will become law, and those controversial elements relating to devolution that have caused so much friction between the Scottish and UK governments will become law too. That row isn't going away.
Thank you very much, Nick. Well, staying with Brexit, Scotland's Rural Economy Secretary has set out a 5-year transition period for farmers after Brexit. Fergus Ewing also says he wants to hear farmers' views on the post-Brexit landscape as the subsidy system changes. It's in response to accusations by farmers that the Scottish Government has been slow in coming up with proposals. Here's our political correspondent, Andrew Kerr.
In the East Lothian Hills, it's a long way from the wrangles between Brussels and London, but the impact of Brexit will be felt here and elsewhere. This hill farmer explained what he and his colleagues want to see from the politicians.
What we want is politicians to make a decision what we're going to do, so that we know going forward what's in the pipeline, and put a bespoke system for Scotland in that delivers for the people that are taking that risk to produce food and the other public benefits.
Scottish farmers are used to uncertainty. They have to deal with the Scottish weather, of course. But the future of their sector is especially hard to predict just now because of Brexit. Today, the Rural Economy Secretary attempted to provide some stability.
You're not needing a wee bit of rain, are you?
Fergus Ewing is seeking farmers' views for a consultation. His vision of the post-Brexit landscape is 2 years of stability on farm payments and then 3 years drawing up a simplified system of subsidies.
This continuity of income over the next period of 5 years will, I think, be very much welcome by farmers. They want certainty, they want stability, and they want simplicity. And in this paper, which we are publishing today, I would urge farmers and others interested in rural Scotland, let us have your views. I believe, though, we are on the right track.
But his opponents believe it's been a tardy approach to get on the right track.
Well, I think the first point to make is that it's taken so long to get here. We have been pressurising the government for months. Industry, crofters, farmers across Scotland have been wanting some detail. And at last, eventually, after months of waiting, there does seem to be a document before us.
So rural communities can now have their say as they prepare to exit the European Union. Andrew Kerr, reporting Scotland, East Lothian.
It's 11 minutes to 7. A reminder of tonight's top story. The civil servant who claims she was taped to a chair by colleagues after she complained about racism and sexism says she felt petrified and degraded. And still to come, on World Refugee Day, we visit an exhibition of items donated to those fleeing their homelands. Schools in the Scottish borders are teaching more than 100 children who live in England. Many of them attend the secondary schools in Eyemouth and Duns. It seems one reason is past problems at Berwick Academy, just over the border. Our education correspondent Jamie McIver has been to Berwick to find out more.
Alana Flatman is proudly English, but she went to a Scottish school. She did it to beat the bullies.
I feel it was a positive reaction against the bullies, and it had proven to be a success as soon as I started. So...
Never look back.
And I never look back, no.
Still, it wasn't an easy option for Alana and her mum. It meant travelling some 30 miles every day between Berwick and Duns and switching to a different education system.
Just made it enjoyable, and I thoroughly understood the qualifications. Obviously, from coming from England, it was totally different.
A surprisingly high number of youngsters from here on the English side of the border are being educated at Scottish schools. About 100 students at secondary schools in the Scottish Borders area have English postcodes. One reason may be the legacy of problems at Berwick Academy. It experienced poor behaviour and disappointing exam results. Parents sought alternatives.
They've been sending the children elsewhere, so further south in Northumberland to Alnwick and Morpeth, and then further across the border to Scotland to schools like Duns and Eyemouth, which obviously involves considerable travelling distances.
But Georgina Hill is right behind the improvements being made by Berwick's new head.
I'm really pleased to see we've got kids going to places like Oxford and Cambridge.
He's confident his school has turned the corner and would welcome any parent who needed reassurance.
We want them to come and have a look round, really. Speak to our students. Our greatest ambassadors in the school are most definitely our students, and they'll be able to talk about how the school has changed recently.
Around the border, some will always have a positive reason for travelling to a Scottish school, and there's very little cost to Scottish Borders Council. But the hope in Berwick is the local brain drain will end. Jamie McIver, reporting Scotland, Berwick.
A touring exhibition made up of items donated to refugees has arrived in Scotland. To mark World Refugee Day, Gillian Sharp took a tour with someone who's experienced relying on the hospitality of strangers.
Plastic toys for a child, small acts of kindness. These objects were given to people who've had to flee their homes.
For like a mother with a child, very young child, is very, very important to have like nappies or just milk.
I have to say Iman arrived from Sudan to Scotland with her daughter last year. As she looks around these very ordinary objects, she reflects on her experiences.
When arriving here, I was really like feeling desperate. Like I didn't have like trust in myself, or let alone with anyone else. So, but it was very short time. I actually felt hopeful again.
The refugee crisis began to unfold in 2015. Museum Without a Home was originally shown in Athens as a response to that. As it's travelled the world, it's added objects. Scotland's contribution, welcome letters from locals.
If you have nothing and you arrive in a new place, the simplest act of kindness can make a really, really big difference, whether that's in Athens or here in Glasgow. So these items, it's the stories that they tell, even if they seem like a strange thing to put in a display case.
This is face cream, you know, it's maybe not an essential of life, but it says that you're a woman, doesn't it?
Yes.
Iman says her experiences have taught her some valuable insights about what home really is.
Does this feel like home now?
Yes, here pretty much yes, feel like home, because yes, home is only made of simple things. Like you put together many simple things, and then you have a home.
Gillian Sharp, reporting Scotland, Glasgow.
Now, within the last hour, researchers at the Roslin Institute near Edinburgh have announced they've altered the DNA of pigs to make them immune to a fatal disease. It could save farmers billions of dollars a year, but it will also fuel the debate on science changing our food. This report from our science correspondent, Kenneth MacDonald.
Meet the new generation. These animals have genes that have been edited so they'll never catch a lung disease that currently costs $2 billion a year.
The trait we've conferred on these pigs is complete resistance to the porcine reproductive and respiratory syndrome virus. The virus is responsible for the most economically damaging disease of pigs worldwide.
This is how they did it. The fatal virus infects a pig by attaching itself to a protein on the surface of its cells. But at the Roslin Institute, they've snipped out just the part of the pig's DNA that would create that protein. So if the virus is the key to the disease, gene editing has thrown away the lock.
Come on, guys. They've been bred now in the third generation, but originally we generated their ancestors from injecting genome editors into a fertilised oocyte, the so-called zygote.
Getting the gene editors into the zygote, an embryo, was delicate work. Now the altered genes are being passed on in the natural way, but there are wider issues to be faced.
There's a huge debate about genetically modified organisms, but these aren't genetically modified. They've been genetically edited. That is, they've had a part of their genome taken out. They've not had something else's genes put into them.
These are not what we call transgenic pigs. They're not containing any other foreign DNA. They're simply 100% pig with 99.9999991% of its genome still, but just a small bit that interacts with the virus has been cut out.
There are currently no rules or regulations covering pigs like these. Before they can be introduced, politicians and consumers will have to decide when, if ever, gene-edited pork appears in the shops. Kenneth MacDonald, reporting Scotland, Edinburgh.
Some football news for you now, and Aberdeen have been handed a tough draw in the Europa League qualifiers. They'll play the English Premier League side Burnley in the second qualifying round. Stephen Gerrard's first competitive game in charge of Rangers will come up against FK Skopje of Macedonia in the first qualifying round. If they get past them, they'll then play either the Moldovans Petra Club or Osijek of Croatia. Hibs meet NSI Runavík from the Faroe Islands in the first round. If they progress, they'll play the Greek side Asteris Tripolis. I hope you understood that. Let's get the weather now from Christopher.
Jackie, thank you very much. Hello there. Some sunshine around to end the day, but also a fair number of showers. There's been a rash of them through the Highlands and Islands and parts of Grampian earlier this afternoon, and now they're starting to move southwards, reaching most parts over the next few hours, but then clearing after midnight to leave many areas dry with some clear skies. Quite a chilly night, temperatures around 6 to 8 Celsius and turning increasingly windy, especially around northern and northeastern coasts. Tomorrow, the summer solstice, the longest day of the year, and it's an early sunrise in Lowick, 3:38 in the morning. Come a lot further south towards Dumfries, the sunrise almost an hour later. What about the weather though? Well, it doesn't look too bad actually. High pressure pushing in off the Atlantic, but around its northeastern flank, just a little system bringing some cloud, and with a northwesterly breeze, quite a cool feel at times despite some sunshine. So as we go through the course of the day, it is largely dry with sunny spells, but a fair weather cloud. Thicker cloud for Orkney and Shetland with some showery rain, but for most of us, a dry and fine day. But it will be quite breezy, particularly towards the west coast, with a moderate to fresh northwesterly. Inland, the wind's lighter and temperatures up to around 17 degrees. Come further north, it will be cooler, and it will be feeling much cooler because the winds here will be strong, particularly around some of these North Sea coasts and through the Northern Isles. But by this point in the afternoon, the cloud clearing through Orkney and Shetland, though still a disappointing 10 degrees there in Lowick. Rest of the afternoon into the evening, the cloud clears, then it's clear and dry. And into Friday, well, some thicker cloud in the northwest, but plenty of sunshine for central and southern parts, and temperatures on the rise too, up to 18 degrees. What about the outlook? Well, if you've been missing the summer weather that we had a few weeks ago, it's probably on its way back, actually. High pressure with us through the weekend and next week. A few weather fronts just grazing the northwest with some thicker cloud and spots of rain at times. But for most, it's dry and sunny and dragging in warmth from the near continent. So by this time next week, we'll be talking about temperatures in the mid, maybe high 20s. That's the forecast.
Sounding good. Thank you very much indeed, Christopher. And now just time to remind you of tonight's main news. The civil servant who claims she was taped to a chair by colleagues after she complained about racism and sexism says she felt petrified and degraded. And that's all from us for now. Join us if you can for our late bulletin, which is at 10:30. Until then, from all the team, good evening.